Ghana, which is the first country to which IMF laid a condition that they should restructure or they should manage the internal debt about Sri Lanka. So debt, whatever they have, 50% is external and 50% is internal. So for Egypt, if it takes $20 to manage their external debt, so it will require 10 times of that. So almost like $200 to manage their internal. The cost of milk was only $2 in 2015. See now, it's around $6. Cost of bread was $1.5. Now it is $3. How many times we have discussed this increase in cost of prices and cost of living, the friends and family? Many times daily. But then an election comes up and we continue to vote, not based on these factors that which alleviated our cost of living, but based on popular politics and promises made by the government. The government starts functioning, it has to face all these factors again, and they make decisions based on the factors that they're facing. And finally, our cost of living goes up again and again. We continue to crumble, then another election comes up, and we again vote without deciding based on the factors and just based on the popular politics. The cycle keeps going on and on and on. It is not our fate, but our vote that decides how we live. And our decision to vote has to be based on various factors that determine how the government performs, how it is performing, and so on. And in this video, we are going to see one of those important conditions. It was not a good big factor, say like a decade ago, but now it has become a very important factor in deciding how much you crumble. Come on, let's see in this video what that factor is. Hello guys, welcome to our channel. In a video recently titled Economics of Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Argentina, we saw what are all the factors that brought about the economic crisis of these three countries, primarily about agriculture and the next about external debt. While we saw that external debt was a huge factor, it was just only a tip of the iceberg. What remains? Let's see in this video today. In another video released recently, it has a title called Bonds. We saw that how government issues bonds and gets money from investors or borrows money from investors for the purpose of any projects which it undertakes. So these bonds are for short term or probably medium term, and they have a fixed interest rate which the government has to pay. So government gets in debt from external investors or external loans like IMF, also gets money from these kind of sources through bonds, through T-bills. So these kind of investments are called domestic debt or internal debt. 2008, after the financial crisis, IMF has continuously been monitoring the domestic debt and has undertaken various research activities to understand the domestic debt levels. And now when some country applies for a bailout, the domestic debt plays a very huge role. So the main reason is that in recent times, the domestic debt has started increasing over and above the external debt. Say, for example, we take Ghana, which is the first country to which IMF laid a condition that they should restructure or they should manage the internal debt before they get a bailout. Why? The reason is that Ghana, which has like around 76 or $77 billion GDP, has 45% of the GDP as external debt, but it has 41% of GDP as internal debt. Okay, internal debt is lesser than external debt, so it's good. So internal debt is in local currency. They should be able to manage it, right? But just look at our previous statement, what we said about bonds. They are short-term loans. Interest rates are quite high, and the revenue to manage these internal debts are way, way, way higher, right? So to finance the external debt, they need only 13% of the government revenues. Whatever revenue the government gets, 13% can be used to manage the external debt. Wow, so it should be far less of internal debt, right? No, they need around 50% of whatever the government earns to finance a 41% of internal debt. So tough, right? So imagine so much of amount going towards the internal debt, how they will be able to pay the money they get from IMF. So IMF has put a condition that they should somehow manage the internal debt, then only they will get the IMF bailout. So next up, we are going to see about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a GDP of around $89 billion, and the total debt, whatever they have, 50 percentage is external and 50 percentage is internal, and it takes around like 9 percentage of total government revenues to manage the external debt, whereas it takes around 22 percentage of government revenues to manage the internal debt. Imagine for a country which is stuck by economic recession, this is pretty huge. Next is Pakistan. Pakistan, which has a GDP of $348 billion, has around 75 percentage of debt, of GDP as debt. Okay, so out of this total debt, we have one third, that is around 33 percentage, is external debt, and two thirds, 66 percentage, is internal debt. And say if it takes like 10 percentage to manage the external debt, it will take 60 percentage or 6 times the revenue to manage the internal debt. Next, we are going to look at Egypt. Egypt has a total GDP of $404 billion, which is the topper of this list. So it has the topmost GDP among the countries we compared, but it has 88 percentage of debt, 88 percentage of GDP as debt. And of this 88 percentage of GDP, which is debt, so 25 percentage is external, what they get from IMF or other sources. 75 percentage is internal. So imagine the number is so huge for this country. So for Egypt, if it takes, for example, $20 to manage their external debt, so it will require 10 times of that, so almost like $200 to manage their internal debt. So imagine whatever revenue they get, the mostly they have to spend on their internal debt. So it is very critical that the country analyzes the internal debt and restructures it so that they can apply for bailout or conditions which are set by IMF. Okay, so we have been talking about restructuring. So what is restructuring? See, for example, Ghana is the first country in Africa to do this kind of restructuring on internal debt. And what they have done a program recently called DDEP, Domestic Debt Exchange Program. So it's called DDEP. So in this, what they have done is the interest has to be paid regularly for the bonds. So Ghana has proposed this DDEP, wherein it has voluntarily invited investors to come and replace those short-term bonds with a longer-term bonds, which will pay interest low as of now, but over a period of time it will match whatever they have reduced the current amount that they have to pay to investors, so that will save up as revenues, and they can get loan, and they can make or give surety to IMF that they will be able to repay the amount they get from IMF. So that is how the DDEP works, or the domestic debt exchange program or restructuring works. Sri Lanka also has followed Ghana very reluctantly. Sri Lanka also has followed Ghana, and they are going to do the restructuring mainly for the treasury bills, not for the treasury bonds, treasury bills, and they are going to take a decision on how they are going to do it by May by this month end. So this is what is currently happening in the world's market, and domestic debt has started to play a very important role, not in the economics of how the country faces the crisis and how it manages after they get a bailout. Hope you got a good understanding of what domestic debt is and how it impacts various countries. Please keep watching Canadian Fables, and thank you for watching and have a great day.